So, I mentioned this morning that I had new Federation titles. Well, okay. I'll turn off my charges. Okay. Yeah, won't touch it. I have a new showcase that I've never done this particular one before, because we just got our new National Federation titles recently. And I have also put all of them on my website. So if you go to DennisAlexander.com, or if any of your students want to hear me play any of those particular pieces that they might be working on, they can do that very easily, and they can also see at least the first page of the music as well. But for this session, I'm going to start off with a bang, okay? I'd like to, in fact, Wendy, I'm going to give you I think you'll be able to activate it from your chair.
Okay.
But I'm going to start off here with a piece from New Mexico, which is where I live. I've been in New Mexico now for, about 16 years, and I love it there. We had a Dennis Alexander festival and competition for 10 years, and when COVID hit, we decided to disband it, but it was very successful, and it was just lots of fun. This is a piece that I wrote for the more advanced division of that competition, and the piece I want to play is Popey's Rebellion, and this is a kind of a study in, we were talking about imagery this morning, and this is a piece that reflects a big war that went on in the late 1600s between the Spanish and the Indians, and the Indians drove the Spaniards out. So this piece depicts that big battle scene, and it's a real fun festival competition piece. If you have any students at this level who would like something that's really showy, that's fun to play, and I think that they would have fun practicing it. It's also a piece that actually sounds a little harder than it actually is. And I love to write pieces like this for your students. Students sometimes are very, very busy. They don't have a lot of time to practice. So if you can find a piece at their level that makes them sound better than they actually are, that's always fun. So, Popey's Rebellion. And I'll let you go to the next slide. Yeah. fun to practice. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is a new National Federation selection, and I'm so pleased that they chose both of my books of nocturnes for the new catalog this time around. The first book is early intermediate to intermediate pieces. Now these are all pieces that really help prepare students for those wonderful nocturnes of Chopin. Of course, this book is easier, and the pieces that they chose are two. Boy, every time I knock this against a music rack, it goes off. Ah! Okay. So, next slide. This is nocturne number 1. This is one that they chose. They chose this one, and they chose the one in A minor. I have other ones in the book that were maybe even more personal favorites. I have no control over what the committee chooses, of course, but these are all really nice pieces for your students to learn and to understand more about that romantic style that we talked about earlier this morning. Let me just play a little bit of this one for you. Very lyrical. One thing I'd like to mention for your students to be very careful about is when they start this piece, you'll notice that the right hand begins with a thumb on the E, but it's also in the middle of the measure. So I want to make sure that those introductions of the melody are not accented. They've got to be very careful to listen and go to the, again, to the heart of the phrase, which in this case would be the D. You see how I shaped that? Light down. Then carry this all the way to here. So I want that phrase to move forward more, all the way to that measure, what was it, 7, okay? When we get down to the third score of this piece, we have I want that left hand rolled chord to say something, all right? So be sure that they give it enough weight so that it is prominent and creates a really lovely A flat 7 harmony. That's kind of a surprise harmony, so I want it to be really nice and distinct. The piece ends like this. Please make sure they hold the last note for at least 4 beats, maybe longer. And then also, I sometimes see students at the end of a piece do things like this. You'll notice the right hand is tied over, and they'll do this. And take the right hand off and just play the left hand. I don't want to see that, okay? I want both hands up there on the keyboard. And keep them there, 1, 2, 3, 4, wave, slowly up. Flying birds leave their nest, right? And off into their laps, right? The other nocturne is number 6 in A minor. This is an interesting one, I think, just purely from the compositional standpoint. The marking I indicated here is andante amore vole, and that is a term that means lovingly, from the heart, all right? But what's interesting about this one is it has a very narrow opening theme, 2 notes, da 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 da, back and forth, and it starts off like this. On the 9th measure, the 3rd line, in the opening I did that, but then when it comes in again, I don't repeat that theme, I turn it upside down. Da, da, da. See, and go that direction, which makes it more interesting, still the same concept. This morning I mentioned in that little quote that Marvin Blickenstaff was talking about teaching rubato and things, and then Nelita True had mentioned in a comment the importance of making like things different. All right, this is a perfect example of that. In the opening, we have this motif. Okay, I want to make each little repetition of that slightly different. Okay. Slightly different. So it's not just metronomic, but it starts off like this. You hear what I did there? It just gives a little bit of emphasis on that last repetition in the beginning of measure 2. I want that particular C, the 3rd C in the series, to be maybe the most important, so that they're not all the same. So I think if your students were to play this nocturne and if they do things like this, the judge would be very impressed. Then what I do on the next page, well, let me start at the top of the page. I go through a little series of different colorful harmonies. Of rubato there to give color to that change of harmony. Again, that's making like things different. It's the same exact melody, but with a little different harmony. And what else do I do here? Starting at measure 25. What do you see happening in the score there? In measure 17, if you back up, I have that theme in half notes. Pocomoso. Another reason why our students need to know their terms, and if they don't know what pocomoso means, they better find out. They can go to the internet. Don't tell them. don't tell them what it means. Tell them to look it up. Okay, they'll be more apt to remember it if they look it up themselves, right? But more motion, okay, a little bit more motion, so moving forward. But then in measure 25, look what happens. Instead of going like this, I go. So I cut that theme in half and make those notes quarter notes instead of half notes. So these are little things that I would like to point out to the students if they're working on a piece like this. And then all of a sudden in measure 29, I switched to D major. Next page. And then a tempo. I just want you to hear how boring it would sound if I didn't give it direction or if I didn't give it color. If I just simply played it like a metronome. Okay. That was pretty dull, wasn't it? Yeah. So we want our students to get that feeling of rubato and romantic style and movement, and when you have a little more of a static type of melody, it needs to go somewhere. It needs to have a push, it needs to have direction. So those are the things I'm really looking for. Okay, book 2, another Federation selection. These nocturnes are a little more interesting, a little more complicated, of course. I have to tell you, if you're ever teaching these or this particular book, probably my 2 favorite nocturnes in the book are, well, I have 3 favorites, and the Federation didn't choose any of those 3, unfortunately, but it doesn't matter. You're going to love the ones that they chose. The one in F major, the one in G major, and then I wrote a nocturne in this book in D major, my favorite key. I mentioned it this morning, optimistic, happy key, and I wrote that nocturne in 5/8 meter, because I've never seen a nocturne in 5/8 before. So I figured somebody has to do this, and I was so pleased with the way it turned out. It's been a real popular one in the book. I have discovered from videos that I've seen online. Anyway, here are the 2 that they chose. This is number 12 in D flat major. As Chopin so often does in his own nocturnes, when he repeats a melodic line, he usually adds a little bit to it. And you all know this from teaching and playing Chopin nocturnes. So I try and do the same thing in these particular nocturnes. When that theme repeated, you heard me do the turn, instead of just without the turn, and then I threw in a little grace note. Okay, this gives it a little bit more color. Then when we move into the next section of this nocturne, as in many of the Chopin nocturnes, Chopin often, as you know, gets very dramatic and powerful. lyrical sounds in some of his nocturnes. So this one is another example of that. We start off here in measure 33. It's a really lovely piece, I think, and it has a lot of potential for students who want something that's lyrical, that's also very dramatic, and that I think would be a real audience favorite. So, those are the two nocturnes from those collections. Let's go on. I wish I had time to show you more of the nocturnes. But I just don't. I'll never get through everything. I'll be lucky if I get through everything anyway. Next slide. Oh, I just threw those in. I was going to show them if I had time. Again, if your students are doing any of these nocturnes, please go to this website and they can find all of those videos, bring them up very, very easily and quickly, and I do a little bit of commentary along with the performance of the entire nocturne. Okay, next. That's what it looks like if you actually get into the website, and then you just keep scrolling down and it gets through every single nocturne. Okay, toccatas. These are not, unfortunately, on the Federation list. I wish they had been, but these are new. These are the last books that I have done with Alfred. I don't know if you know or not, I have completely retired from composing. And I decided, well, it was a difficult decision, but I just decided that the world has enough Dennis Alexander music, and I wanted to spend my energies at this point in my life teaching adult students, which I love more than anything. And I've got 18 adult students now that I work with. But so this is the last book you'll ever see from me, from Alfred Music Publishing. And over the years, I have written so many toccatas, all different levels. And sometimes I'll get asked, how many toccatas have you written? And at one point I didn't even know, so I went through my library and I made a listing, and it's on my website. It's under teaching tips. So if you're ever curious, you can go there and you'll see a list of all the various toccatas, whether they're in a collection or if it's a solo sheet, and what level it is. And then I also did these 2 books of toccatas at the request of a lot of different teachers. And so I just want to show you a couple of these real quickly. Book 1 is the green cover, and it's all early, intermediate to intermediate levels. These are such fun to play. They're bouncy, they're happy, they're rhythmical, and if you have students that like to play fast pieces, even though they need to have slow pieces too, please, okay, to balance it out, they'll have lots of fun with these. This is Toccata Capriccio. I marked it presto giocoso. So rapidly, joyfully, happily is the character. You'll notice on the first page, if we could go back to the first page, Wendy. Yeah. Oh,
sorry.
there you go. The left hand has the melody in measure 9, but both hands are in the exact same 5-finger pattern. Okay, so we have E minor, then D major, C major, and again that makes it a little easier for them to manipulate that particular section. The middle section goes to D major, right back the opening. It ends, it's really fun ending. So if you want a kind of a dramatic sound, you always try and intersperse one chord with another clashing chord to give it that dissonance that you want, and it ends with a real bang. Okay, the next one is Toccata alla breve, and I marked this one molto allegro. This is, again, it's a 5-finger pattern, mostly all the way through it. So all of these toccatas in book 1 really work well for students with small hands, by the way. Because if you're looking for those kinds of pieces, you'll find a lot of them here. This one goes like this. So we want to feel it in 2 in cut time. As you can hear in that particular piece, and then lots of little chords in first inversion. You know, one of the earliest pieces I ever wrote for Alfred, and to this day it's still a big seller, Toccata Brillante, and that has the same type of first inversion chords. If you know it. Taught that piece? Anybody? It's a really good one. If you haven't taught it, you might want to try it sometime. It's one of the best ones in the book. Okay, that gives you just a little idea of book 1. Let's go to the next slide. And book 2, these are intermediate to late intermediate types of toccatas. I've got in this book a piece called Blue Toccata, Platinum Toccata, Toccata alla Tarantella, Toccata Espanol. Oh, that's a really fun one. I had to do that one since I live in New Mexico. And Toccata Intrepido. So I dedicated this book to Gail Liu, who's a teacher friend of mine in the Bay Area, and then book 1 I dedicated to Martha Baker Jordan, who was a very fine teacher in California, and unfortunately we lost Marty last year. I replaced her when she was starting her early retirement at Cal State Fullerton, and so we've been very good friends for so long. So the Blue Toccata, I called it Blue because I used that standard blues progression all the way through this piece. Every single group has the standard blues progression. And you all know that the standard blues progression is 4 bars of 1. 4 4 1 chords, right? And then you have a group of 4 4 1 1, and then you have 5 4 1 1. Okay, that's your 12-bar progression. But what I did in this piece, since it's in cut time, I just doubled those. All right. So instead of having 4 1 chords, I have 8. Okay, in the group. So everything is just doubled. But in the right hand, we've got this little pattern. It goes like this. So that's those first 8 bars are your 1 1 1 1. Okay, and then I go to the 4 chord. 1 5 4 So still, those last 8 bars I just played were still 1 1 1 1, and then I go to 4. I'm sorry. So forth. But the whole piece is just built on the standard blues progression. What's important in this piece, if you ever teach it, and it's actually a really, really good technical exercise. Wrist rotation, okay? Rolling, this wrist in the opening, I have this little pattern. If I play that with a loose wrist and roll it over to that black key, every time I change, with a 1 or 4 or 5, the second finger always goes over to a black key. So it makes it very, very consistent and very, very comfortable in the hand. I mean, I can sit here and I can do this all day long. It's very relaxing. You get sick of hearing it, okay? But I wouldn't get tired. Okay? So it's nice to have a toccata that's really fast, where you're not going to get tense or tired from the patterns that are there. So that's a little bit of the blue toccata. There's a toccata alla tarantella in G minor, which goes like this. Idea. 6/8 rapid tarantella type style, relentless. It has a really fun middle section of a lot of left hand melodies. Tarantella, but it's just a little idea of the pieces. Let me just play a few measures of the toccata espagnole. I don't have it on the screen, but it's one of my favorite pieces. And if you ever teach this one, it starts off not quickly like a typical tarantella. And the reason why I mention that is because if your students start off in the beginning too fast, they'll be in real trouble at measure 24 when it breaks into 16th notes all over the keyboard. And then it really gets into the toccata flavor. But it starts off like this. tempo very carefully until they get to that particular spot. From there on, it's constant 16th notes and all the way to the end, and it ends with a nice big glissando that finishes off. So, going ahead. Another National Federation selection, especially in jazzy style. I was so delighted that they picked two of these books. It's a 3-book series, and they have some pieces from both book 1 and book 2. My adult students love this book. A lot of them really love jazzy sounds. They're sophisticated sounds. The pieces are easy to play, but they sound very, very grown up. If we look at As September Goes for a second. Lots of 7th chords here. And we have some slow quarter note triplet patterns. So, I love teaching jazz pieces, and mainly because you're going to find rhythms in jazz that you're never going to find in Bach or Beethoven or Haydn or any of those classical composers. Really beautiful, expressive experience. And I think when our students learn to do things like this elegantly and gracefully, I want to make sure that they, when they do those crossovers in the left hand, and it starts off like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, that they, when they go over, they do it in a relaxed, rhythmical pattern, and they go back and forth. Time it so that when they go back down, they don't do this. 2, 2. It looks jerky. They might be worried about getting there in time, but train them to do it in a nice, graceful arc. A very beautiful gesture back and forth. And you might just have them isolate the left hand, starting in measure 18. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Just leave out the right hand, okay? And get those nice movements really settled in to their system. Okay, another piece, Smooth as Silk. This is a fun one in 6/8 meter. Careful to really count those syncopations all the way through. they'll be tempted when they get to the third measure in the opening. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So they've got to really, really count carefully. Start off slowly, but they'll be tempted to play that last eighth note too soon. Like this. Okay. And it's a 1, 2. Okay. 1, 2. I sometimes tell my students if they really need to feel a tied note that's syncopated, to give a little grunt, you know, right from here. Da 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 da. Okay, and it helps them to internalize that syncopation and the rhythm that's very persistent all the way through. And it ends like this. Ending to be nice and soft and silky, all right? Okay, this is especially jazz style, book 3, and this is one of my favorite books in my entire library. When I was in college at the University of Kansas in Lawrence, I played in a private dinner club every weekend. I was one of those stranger pianists who could play by ear. And I'm so grateful that my first piano teacher never discouraged me from improvising and playing by ear. She was always just kind of amused by it all, I think, because she also could improvise. I remember sometimes I would go to my lesson and I would have been practicing during the week, and it might be something like let's see, like a Clementi sonatina, and I would start to play it just like it's supposed to be, and then I'd get a little carried away and like. And she'd look at me and she'd giggle, and she'd say, "Way you'll dance." Now, that was just right clever. But if you do that on the recital, I will kill you. But, I mean, thank goodness for my first piano teacher. I always tell teachers wherever I go to give a workshop that the first piano teacher is the most important teacher you will ever have. I think it's like kindergarten, you know? The kindergarten teacher can make or break a student from wanting to learn or not wanting to learn. But sometimes just your personality, if you have a lovely, smiley face and you make them feel welcome from the very first lesson, and if they feel safe and they feel inspired and they feel motivated, they'll be playing for life. My first piano teacher had no idea that I was going to end up making my life work piano and teaching piano and writing music for kids and adults. She had no idea. She just treated me like she did everybody else in her studio. And I am so grateful to her for all the things that she did for me. Always and forever, I'll be grateful. you need to teach Bergmüller. Okay, remember that little piece I showed you earlier this morning, Consolation, where we had melody on top and inner notes in the middle of the right hand, you know, but that's very, very important to be able to voice that. When this book first came out, and I was showing it for the first time, I would play this piece. I would sometimes do this. They would chuckle. You know, sometimes we hear pieces that we really love to teach, and people will say, "Oh, well, that sounds just like Misty." Now, well, yeah, the first three notes do. Okay, just the first three notes. Sometimes it's fun to take even a well-known popular tune and use the first 2 or 3 notes of the motif, and then elaborate on it and go from there and make it totally your own. That's kind of what I did. I actually wasn't even thinking of Misty when I wrote this piece, but then later on it became, you know, kind of the thing. All right, let's go ahead. These are newer books. You might not even know these books yet. I had never published with Hal Leonard before, but I did. Well, it's a long story. I told Wendy on the ride home last night kind of a little bit about the story, but Alfred Music, the new owners of Alfred, eliminated the piano department. Oh gosh, 5-6 years ago. They did not understand the value of printed sheet music. They were into band and orchestra and choral. And so just overnight like that, the entire piano department, which was huge, and it was the most successful part of Alfred Music, and has been for years and years and years, was suddenly gone. And so then all of a sudden I didn't have a publisher. So I did some Christmas books with Chose Music. They had to ask me to write for them, and then I went over to Hal Leonard and did these books. And they're called the Overture Series because about 3.5 years ago we sold our home and moved into a new 55+ community, retirement community, although it's just a strictly apartment living, and downsized, and I gave 18 boxes of music and books to the New Mexico School of Music, and I still have a lot of music, but I didn't have room for everything I used to have in our big house. So the building is called Overture. And I was trying to think of a good name for this series. I was writing for Hal Leonard, so I called it the Overture Series. So we have, the first book is called Mini Overtures, and those are real simple, like beginning level pieces with teacher accompaniments. So if you're looking for a book like that, check out Mini Overtures, okay? The Federation put on book 2 and book 3 on their list. And let me just show you a couple from, if we can go to that next slide, Wendy. Okay, we have a little piece called Copycat. I think they have 4 pieces from this particular book, and this is book 2 of the Overture series called Magical Overtures. This is a little contrapuntal piece, okay? It's basically in 5-finger patterns. The other hand. So it's a really, really good one for training our students to do that particular kind of Baroque, very early Baroque style. Another piece that they chose was the Lydian March. This is, I think, a really good piece to concentrate on for students who tend to play surfacey. You know, sometimes these elementary students will be so cautious, it's like they're playing on eggshells. And I always am interested in getting them to play with their whole upper body, getting a nice big full sound. So, and right off from the beginning, I want big arm drops. Lots of big sounds here. It ends like this. Okay, that's the Lillian March. Now I want to show you a little piece called Creepers. This would actually be a really good little Halloween piece if you're ever looking for a nice, easy Halloween piece. A left-hand melody. Lots of little chromatic patterns in both hands all the way through this piece. A left-hand melody. The coda goes like this. Really a fun piece to play and a fun piece to listen to. This gives them all kinds of interesting things, which they, I think, will enjoy learning. I want to show you, a little bit of Perilous Journey is another one that they chose. Are just as important as the notes, sometimes more important than the notes. So make sure they really give full value to those rests that are in Perilous Journey, okay? I want them to also describe to me what kind of a picture are they painting when they play this piece. What kind of a perilous journey are they on? And what happens when we get to those rests and those moments of silence all the way through. So let's go ahead real quick. Magnificent, I knew I was going to run out of time completely. Magnificent Overtures. This is a selection. This is the third book, Valse Sentimentale. Called Mystical Odyssey. It was got cut off at the top there when I was making the copy. Mystical Odyssey is like a journey down the Nile. You have to think of Cleopatra and Egypt when you play this piece. It starts off like this. section with lots of running 16th notes and whole tone scale patterns. There's all kinds of stuff going on in this piece, so it's a really, really good teaching piece. Let's move ahead real quick. I'm just about done. First lyric pieces. I mentioned this book this morning. I mentioned Falling Leaves. That's a selection for the Federation catalog. And Moon Shadows is one that goes like this. I like to give a piece like this to students who tend to be tight and stiff. Okay? It gives them lots of opportunities to really relax, and they have these dotted half notes. Okay, again, flying birds leave their nest, right? At the release of every half note, let the pedal sustain, float over. Float over, graceful motions. So forth. It's a really good piece for those kinds of students that need help with loosening up and playing. I want to mention, if you've never taught from any of our repertoire books that go with a Premier Piano course, you will find so many fun pieces to teach in these books. I just want to mention a couple of them. Okay, in book 3, we have this Starry Night. I mentioned it this morning. It's a really lovely romantic work. I want to show you this another toccata piece called Premier Toccatina. Every student I've ever taught this to loves this piece. But it's great fun to play and very, very accessible. You'll find in those repertoire books, by the way, lots of other standard classical composers, along with original pieces that Martha Meir and I have both written. So there's lots of original things, but you'll find Heller, you'll find Scheidt, you'll find Scarlatti, you'll find Benda. That wonderful little A minor sonatina by Benda is in book 4 of the repertoire book. And there's also a really nice original duet in each of those repertoire books. So if you're looking for some really fun repertoire, go to those repertoire books that we did for the Premier course. Let me have the remote. I'm just going to finish up here real quick so we can get out of the way of our next presenter. My concertos are on the Federation list. Again, go to my website and your students can hear these pieces. This is the most advanced one, and I forgot I had a recording of this on this. Well, we can't play it. I don't think it's gonna. Jesse I didn't tell him to set it up for this session. I said set it up for tomorrow. So 3 movements. And it's a really nice one for your young students if you want to give them a little concerto experience. Of course, orchestra part is on the second piano. And then this is early intermediate selection, 3 movements again, Imperial Concertante. And that's what the score looks like. The second movement's so beautiful. Let me just give you a little idea. It's, that's the main theme. You'll really enjoy teaching that, I think. And then the Concertante in G major is the most advanced one. A 2 piano piece, Fanfare Toccata Rondo, is on the Federation list. And then these are other one-hand solos. The Constellation in D flat major for right hand alone is a more advanced piece. I wrote that for Ingrid Clarefield after she had her stroke. And it's really a gorgeous piece. The Peaceful Hearts is for right hand alone. And Elegy for left hand alone. And then this is a 2 piano work called Flirtatious. They're also all on the Federation list. And from my entire piano library, this might be my favorite book. One of my favorite books, I should say. This is book 5 of 5-star solos. And there are 6 books in this series. If you've never taught in this series, please take a look at it sometime. Again, go to my website. You'll see every single book, and you'll see 3 examples from every book with recordings and examples of the music. In book 5, this is a piece called You Gotta Toccata. Really, really fun piece. And then this is a nice little arrangement. I did a Shenandoah in 5/8 meter. If I had more time, I'd play it for you right now, but I want to make sure that our next presenter has time to get set up. So again, visit the website, and for teaching tips, contact information, videos, all kinds of stuff you'll find on that website. Thank you. Okay. That was a whirlwind tour. There's a technology session in here, I think, in a few minutes, and I'm going to stay for it because I'm really interested in technology. I'm going to show you tomorrow 2 of my most favorite apps that I cannot live without when I'm teaching my students, and I hope that you'll be here tomorrow. Anyway, do stay for this next session, and we'll see you maybe at the banquet later this evening, and have a great rest of the day. And we'll see you for sure tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Mr. Alfred, does your website have the federated pieces listed? Does your website have the federated pieces listed?
Anyone haven't received raffle tickets?
Oh.
As you register,
Mr. Alexander,
I will give
someone has asked Dennis